It's back. You heard me, the draft ranking series is back. For the third straight season, I'm going to be going over the best players of each position in the 2025 NFL Draft. First up, like always, is the quarterbacks. This QB class is noted as weak, but there are some top talents and some mid-pack impact players who could develop into something better. So, let's get right into this. Who is the best quarterback in the 2025 NFL Draft? Let's find out. Since I have 11 quarterbacks on my draftable list this season, I will say that the one guy who missed this list is Indiana's Curtis Rourke. I thought Rourke showed some flashes of greatness, but he did struggle against the two great teams he played, and he's coming back from a torn ACL. I think at this point, he's just an emergency quarterback at the next level. But let's get right into this top 10 list, beginning with a possibly controversial pick in Syracuse quarterback Kyle McCord. I think McCord has potential in the right system, but there are also issues with his game that will impact him at the next level. But McCord also has some very good positives that I think make him polarizing. He does a great job moving around in the pocket and avoiding pressure. That footwork combines with nice confidence to make throws under pressure. He gets out of sacks really well, and overall, I'm impressed with his mental ability in the pocket. He continues on with good zone reads and finding that first read that's typically open. His anticipation is very good, and even with his arm talent, he puts very good touch on balls under 40 yards and has thread some tight needles on tape, especially in the short and medium game. But the polarizing stuff comes from his sometimes awful decision making and mediocre arm strength. McCord's ADOT on passes over 20 yards was 27.2, which was the worst of any 2025 NFL Draft quarterback by a good margin. He also is a one-read quarterback, which really shows when that first read isn't open. His release time was one of the shortest in FBS last year. On top of that, he is really bad when flushed out of the pocket, unable to work off script, which is a strength of many QBs in this draft class. So McCord comes in as a polarizing prospect that at this time I just cannot get behind him. He grades out as a late 6th rounder for me, which is more of a QB3 with QB2 upside. Number 9 on my list is someone who is not that common on draft rankings, but nonetheless, Mizzou quarterback Brady Cook is not high on my list. I think it's worth taking a shot on him, but just as a QB3 option, so don't overreact here. And I'm not overreacting when I say that Cook has one of the highest floors of any QB in this class. He does a good job making accurate off-platform throws, his ball placement really shines at all 3 levels of the field, and he's got the mobility to impact as an option quarterback as well. But my favorite thing about Cook is his ability to recognize blitzes pre-snap, and he will audible out of it or throw a quick pass as a result. On the flip side of things, Cook will bail out of the pocket too early, and his pocket presence is hardly viable for the NFL. His arm talent is also a tad underwhelming, particularly his arm strength, which just pans out as mediocre. With Cook having a high floor, he also has a low ceiling, as he does not have a special trait that'll make him stick out. Nonetheless, I think Cook stands out as a clipboard QB who might be able to step in. I have Cook as a late 6th round value, just like McCord, so the same thing stands where I think he's a QB3 with QB2 upside. We significantly move up around as I get into my 8th best quarterback in this class, which is Notre Dame's Riley Leonard. After watching him in the playoffs, I have a few opinions of him that were solidified because of his play. Most of those are on the negative end of things, and that begins with his arm talent. The best trait he has there is his mechanics, but he throws with under-average accuracy at all 3 levels of the field. His off-platform capabilities aren't anything to adore, and his arm strength shows in the Irish avoiding downfield passes at some times. He also focuses on one read too often, and he really needs to work on his poise, both withstanding the pressure and making throws through it. But there are positives to Leonard's game. We all know how good of an athlete he is, but his vision in the open field impresses me even more. He may be a one-read guy, but he does a good job finding the right guy before the snap, some would call it the hot route. Add in the anticipation, his arm talent improvements in 2024, and his ability to diagnose blitzes before the snap, and you have a high upside option. Leonard is a quarterback who I would draft if I was looking for a developmental quarterback who could sit behind my star or even superstar QB. I graded him as an early 5th round pick, which pans out as a low-end QB2 at the next level. Coming in at my QB7 spot is a bold pick, especially when you compare it to how consensus is shaping it. Oregon's Dillon Gabriel. He's got some traits, don't get me wrong, but it's not as many as the guys above him. I'll begin positively, where I can say that Gabriel has a good feel for the pocket. He operates well inside it and will do a nice job of leaving if he has to. Now, he does struggle to throw under pressure, and some throws are just super erratic when that happens. Back to the positives though, where he's a good multi-read processor and a good decision maker outside of the pocket. He also has some very good arm strength in terms of zipping passes in the short and medium game, and overall there are some things to like about Gabriel. But the bad is where I get cautious. He feels like a system QB to me, as he ran a lot of design plays with Oregon. I was cautious with Carson Beck for the same reason, and look what happened. Other vitals that don't hit the mark are that he is definitely undersized, and he's one of the oldest QB prospects in this class, let alone him underthrowing deep balls consistently, and he rarely throws down the deep middle anyway. So Gabriel really just feels like a guy who needs to play into his strengths and get out of his weaknesses if he wants to be a starting quarterback. He gets a late 4th round grade in my books, and he is the QB7 in this class. There are guys whose stocks fall, and then there are some guys who just flat out disappoint and they aren't able to raise their stock at all. That guy in this class is Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers, who just flat out did not have a good season with the Longhorns in 2024. Despite that, he still has a consensus 2nd round tag, as I see massive concerns with Ewers' footwork. While he can make great throws under pressure at times, he will let the pocket collapse too much, and he will also leave the pocket too early. It's not just the footwork, as he will lose sight of blindside rushers and his mechanics can get sloppy at times. That's not even including his bad vitals, where he comes in as undersized with huge medical concerns. He's not just a ball of negativity though, as his deep game ability has huge upside for the league. He puts great touch on deep balls and even can make those throws in the clutch. He is a good processor as well, going through his reads before getting it to his check down. He works well off script as well, has solid mobility that NFL teams will utilize, and he can make off-balance throws fairly well. I'm not the only one who's not sold on Quinn Ewers, but if he gets in the right situation and sits back for a year or two, he could have the potential to be a starter. Even then, I still gave him an early 4th round grade, which kind of pans him out as a reliable backup and nothing more. As we get into the top 5 here, we get into one of those stock fallers as we discuss Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe. I have a fun NFL comp and a smaller Anthony Richardson, and you'll see why when I get into the strengths and weaknesses. In terms of strengths, Milroe's impact in the deep game is actually very strong. He's got some good velocity on his throws in the deep game, and he's able to deliver these throws with good ball placement. He's also very good at evading pressure and evading tacklers, and he's a poised thrower who stands strong through pressure. But his biggest strength is his elite athleticism, which shows when you see that he ran for more touchdowns than he passed for in 2024. But on the negative end of things, his touch on short and medium balls is just atrocious. He misses these passes way too much, and part of that has to do with his mechanics, where he sometimes looks like he's throwing a baseball. He also makes some terrible decisions as a passer. He needs to improve on his processing through zone defenses, and overall he's one of the most polarizing quarterback prospects I've ever scouted, but not as polarizing as Richardson. He obviously won't go as high as Richardson did in the 2023 draft, but his athleticism and upside will make a team want to take a chance on him, maybe in the 1st round. I have Milroe graded as a late 3rd round pick where he could see snaps, but he just pans out as a developmental guy. Tied with Milroe, but receiving a slightly better true score, is Ohio State quarterback Will Howard, who's number 4 on the list. I've been higher on Howard for a while now, but after his playoff performance, his stock is actually higher than where I have him graded. Some of the things he showed in the playoffs and in his collegiate career altogether include his very good pocket play. He's very good at evading pressure and moving in the pocket, and he will make throws through some heavy pressure. I also think he's a good multi-read processor who also does well in 2-minute clutch situations. This goes without mentioning his good athleticism and scrambling capabilities out of the pocket. But he does have some issues, including extremely inconsistent accuracy all around. He will sometimes miss wide open passes and you just shake your head at them. He also forces passes to receivers instead of throwing the ball away, and he loses versatility when given his struggles in RPO situations. Nonetheless, I think Howard is a good pro-style QB who also has the athleticism as a plus. But I do think he pans out as a late third-round grade, and that means he's just a reliable backup throughout his career. Alright, it's time for the top 3, where I have some shakeup potential as I talk about Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart. There's potential for him to get up to number 2, but because the combine and pro days haven't happened yet, he stays at number 3 for now. What I saw on tape and at the Senior Bowl is a pro-style quarterback who will work best if you play to his strengths. His ball placement in the short and medium game is among the best in this class. He does a great job stepping up into the pocket when he has to, he's mechanically sound, and he's got some good arm talent going past the accuracy. I think Dart will succeed in some sort of up-tempo offense. But where Dart doesn't succeed in my eyes is his awkward processing. Part of this has to do with Kiffin's system, but I do think he locks in on one read and will miss obvious reads past the first one. He also isn't anything to adore in the deep game, as the arm strength is viable, but the accuracy going deep is not. Finally, he will throw into tight coverage and double coverage way too often, but again, part of that is likely Kiffin's offensive scheme. It's going to be intriguing to see just how much Dart translates over to the NFL. He's a late second round pick in my eyes, which is more of a low-end QB1, high-end QB2. In the consensus world, there is a debate going on who the best quarterback in this class is. I don't think it's that close, as for me, Shedeur Sanders is number 2. I'm not as high as some people are on the Colorado signal caller, but I still do think he has some traits that will translate over. And for that reason, I do think he is the runner-up QB in this class. I don't see him being the best though, because he stands in the pocket for way too long and takes so many avoidable sacks. Caleb Williams had this same issue, but he had things that made up for it. And while Shedeur does too, he also underthrows deep balls way too often. He really struggles to diagnose blitzes before the snap, and his ADOT was 108th out of 127 FBS quarterbacks before postseason play. I think it's risky to take Sanders top 5, but there are good things about him, including his ability to maneuver around in the pocket. He does have some good mobility, he just needs to trigger his escape quicker. He's a good multi-read processor who throws with good accuracy and anticipation in the short and medium game. I also think he does a good job throwing through pressure, and his poise overall is pretty dang good. So Shedeur does have some valuable traits that might not make him a top 5 pick, but still makes him the runner-up quarterback in this class. Sanders receives a mid-second round grade from me, which means he will likely end up around the 25 to 30 range on my big board. Which means, to wrap this video up, my QB1 in the 2025 NFL Draft is none other than Miami's Cam Ward. I've been following Cam Ward for a few years now, so I don't want to be too biased. But I'm really not. He has the talent and the upside to potentially be the number 1 pick in this upcoming draft. First off, I think Ward's best trait is how he works out of the pocket. His escapability is phenomenal, he makes throws on the run very well, and his ability to work off script is some of the best I've ever watched. His mechanics are awesome, he has the arm strength that NFL teams want, he's able to fit balls into tight gaps all around the field, he thrives in those hurry-up 2-minute drill situations, he's got the viable athleticism and mobility, the list goes on. People point out his nonchalant play style, and some people see that as a negative. I see that as confidence. He's thrown some super dumb passes that either get picked or maybe he gets lucky and gets bailed out. He's also prone to blitzes because of his play style, and he will miss some crucial reads at times. There aren't many negatives I have for Ward, but that decision making is just super brutal. If Ward was a better decision maker, he could be the best player in this whole class. Unfortunately, he doesn't come up as that. But he still comes up as the best quarterback and a blue chip prospect. He's one of 15 to 20 guys that I see as blue chips in this draft. So there you have it. Cam Ward is my quarterback 1 in the 2025 NFL Draft. Wait, are you not subscribed yet? Well, do it now. I release content like this all the time and would really appreciate your support. I'm Chase Keller from Chase Keller Journalism, and I will see you all next time.